Aloha, everyone, and welcome to the Empowered Hour. Today, I have my friend Mandy. Mandy, how are you?
I am good, trying to stay cool in Texas. It's about 110.
Ooh,
Yeah.
I feel like I'm sweating at 80.
Oh, okay. Let's see. Now you're just rubbing it in. We'd kill for 80. It's 80 probably in my house right now with the AC. So,
wow. Yeah, that's rough. And what part of the world are you in?
I live in West Texas now. So, I mean, Texas is huge. It's kind of going towards New Mexico, closer to New Mexico. Yeah.
Very cool. Very cool. So yeah, I get the 110 degrees thing.
Yeah.
So share a little bit about your background and the work that you do.
Well, my background now is I've been a retired Olympic level taekwondo athlete for a while, and I now work for a company called Pave Prevention that goes into corporations and their proactive anti-violence education. And my boss is an Olympic gold medalist named Arlene Lemus, and that's how I kind of was brought into the company under her wing. She's known me since I was 15. So that's a little bit about my background.
That's really awesome. And yeah, I love Arlene. Arlene was my coach for ESD. What?
She said you were awesome. You were very aggressive and they liked it.
But I do. Yeah. Say
the noodles.
Yeah.
The noodles.
Oh, yeah. Oh, God. Everybody brings that up. Yeah. Yes, my first introduction to Udit Sadiqman was basically her asking for a volunteer, and I was so understated wearing a dress, and she was like, "You,
the girly, quiet one."
Yes, that one. Yes, you must hit me with the noodle, and I was like, "You ask, I shall deliver."
Yeah, that is an infamous story.
Yeah. Well, tell me more. Okay, so your background, it's so amazing, and you've done so much work in the world of martial arts. I just want to hear a little bit more how you got into martial arts itself.
My dad was military, and he understood that if he wanted us to be the best at any sport, we'd have to start like super young. I'm talking, my brother's 5, I'm 7, and my brother was technically way better than me, but I was mean. I had that fight. You put me in the ring, I'm gonna beat up the boys, I'm gonna beat up whoever. And so by the time I was 13, and my dad trained us literally 8 hours a day, even on school days. Like, we'd come home and train, and in between train. And with that, best in the world by the time I was 13, and basically recruited to live at the Olympic Training Center and train with adults when I was still a child. So that's how that started. And I had a pretty great career, but behind closed doors. And this is a big part of my story, is I was being abused by male athletes and coaches. And that continued on throughout my entire career until finally at the age of 26. And I say finally because this was like cultural. This was just the way it was. This was the way it was before my time, during Arlene's time, not to Arlene, but I mean, I've heard stories that you just accepted it. But for me, it became acceptable when I was taking underage athletes into my home after they were assaulted and abused. And then when one of my male friends committed suicide, because he was abused. And so I filed a report, and I did not have a great feeling, but I was smart enough to know if I had like an official paper and walked it into the Olympic training center, that no matter what, it'd be on record. And in one day, I lost everything I had worked for: health insurance, my job, my home. They did try to give me like an out to sign a contract saying that I was mentally ill. I made everything up and I could continue to train, have my finances, and go to the Olympics. And I said no. After that, I was homeless, in jail, in prison. I lost my daughter for a while. I couldn't work. I mean, it went on and on and on and on.
Yeah. And it's so interesting, to me, because with the martial arts, the dynamics there, not just in the Olympics, but also just in everyday dojos, it's very predatory. And making sure that you do stick up for yourself, it takes a lot of bravery, a lot of courage. So I commend you for that. I think that it's awesome. And I'm sorry that you had to go through so much, because I know that, it is really difficult when you have this gift that you've given, to the world, and you've done for yourself on every single day, and then suddenly it's stripped away. So, thank you for sharing that story with me, and for us. Thank you for sharing it with us. What was, you said that your friend passed away, and that was a huge turning point. But also for you, when it came to your body autonomy, what was the aha moment?
I just got goosebumps. The big aha moment was after my friend committed suicide. And we all met the next day at a hotel, and his mother walked in, and seeing her face and the reality of everything hit me, and I broke down. And when I broke down, she comforted me, and it all just really, really hit me. Because and I say this for a lot of athletes, there's a lot of athlete worship, especially professional athletes, and I've been around them. I'm not saying all, but most aren't. They don't have to be smart. They can do whatever they want, get away with whatever they want, because all they're expected to do is perform. They don't have to be socialized. They don't have to learn how to be normal, and have the same morals and values and follow the same rules or even laws. So this is a death, and it was a very violent death. And my friend was very clear in his messages and what he left, why he did what he did, and it was because he was being abused by my coach and my teammates. So that was the first one. And the second one for me was, it's just interesting how much you can take upon yourself and disassociate, but when you see somebody else suffering and literally going through what you go through every day, but it's like too much for you. So, you want to help them. And that's kind of what happened with having these underage traumatized women and girls in my home, and realizing I'm not a doctor, I'm not law enforcement, like I cannot handle this on my own. And I would report it to the Olympic Training Center and beg for help for them, and we were just completely shut down every single time. Yeah,
it's awful.
Yeah.
I think that it's really interesting. Something that touched me that you were talking about is the compartmentalization of just the separation. You have to absolutely separate, because if not, then your body actually has to understand what it's going through. I have had personal experience with this, and it was so interesting to me, because I would have these dreams about a house, but having so many different rooms in it. And I would open up the door, and it would be, here's you as a child, here's you as a teenager,
Wow.
this. And it was really interesting, because they talked about, from a psychological perspective, you are trying to separate the different things that happen to you, because your body is doing everything it can to protect itself. So it's interesting to look at it that way of, the reasons why I blocked out all of these things is because my body was trying to protect me. So, when it comes to the healing process, I'm just curious how you got there. What were certain things, I know it's a lifelong journey. I think it's a long,
the hard way. I got there the hard way. First and foremost, I do realize that the training aspect of my sport saved my life. It really got me through everything. There's no way in heck, because everything for me since I was 7 was physical. I had to work everything physical, and I could kind of lose myself in it. So when that was taken away from me, literally in one day, it was my brain just was like, whoa, because to to try to kind of look back and comprehend what I went through, and I'm not exaggerating. Um, and then I wouldn't accept the help because my trauma was so bad, and because it wasn't like the movies where you report and everybody's like, we love you, we believe you. Like, I mean, I'm not throwing anybody under the bus, but this is fact. Friends, family turned their back on me, and a lot of it was fear, a lot of it was being threatened, not understanding. And also, if you have to acknowledge that this has been going on, then what's your part in it? You know, especially when I'm a child and underage, which I was the majority of, you know, being an athlete. So I learned the hard way, and I only got real help when they sat my, excuse my French, ass down in jail, and I had to accept the help, and I did, and it saved my life. Yep.
Yeah. I think, again, it's so brave to be able to come forward and share your story. So many times we go through trauma and we feel like we're so alone. And I am sure that by you sharing your story, you gave other people the courage to be able to do so as well. What was the ripple effect that you saw from that?
Well, I'm going to say this before I answer that. Like guys, remember I say it's cultural, it's environmental, it's your family, community. You know, you're only as healthy as especially as a child, as the people around you. Like, I wasn't going to get the help I needed being surrounded by whom and what I was surrounded by without getting into specifics. The ripple effect, and the other thing that I did where I'm like, I'm brilliant, was way back MySpace. I'm serious. Like MySpace days. I was not an internet computer person because I was constantly training. But when they tried to shut me down and shut me up, I'm like, what can I do with all these documents to where I can like get it out to the world? And I put it all online and told my story. And the ripple effect of that was profound. It wasn't fun, you know, always, but it was profound. Like, my dad was pretty mad, but you got to do what you got to do to save your life and other people's lives. So, yeah.
I think that it's so interesting, you know, because we go into these arts and we train so that we can learn these skills to protect ourselves. But those training locations tend to be very predatory. And what was it like for you to suddenly get introduced to ESD? I know you just took your first ESD training in June. How was that different for you than your martial arts experience?
Well, my first martial art experience up until I was 13, I was pretty protected by my dad. But at the same time, I'm an 80s baby. So my dad wasn't having conversations like when you go on the trip, watch out, you know, for this or that. So nothing that happened to me happened until I was, you know, out of my dad's care. With ESD, this was my second go around. The first time I was invited right out of prison by Udit and Arlene, and I completely could not get through the first day. My PTSD, it was unbelievable. And not only that, my brain the whole time, these wonderful, beautiful, happy, smart women, and I'm like, this doesn't work. None of this is gonna work, you know, because in my mind I had been literally the Mike, and I say Mike Tyson as far as fighting, like the baddest chick dude in my sport, and behind closed doors, you know, there was nothing I could do to stop what was happening to me. Luckily, UD and Arlene, once I was honest with them, they just loved me. They just loved on me and supported me. I mean, I was hiding in the woods. Because I was so embarrassed and scared. This time around, I was like, you know what? No matter what, I'm gonna get through it. Like literally get through it. Like show up, get through it. And I did. And not only did I, an impact, for those who've gone an impact, I'll call it what it was. Their rape scenarios were on your, like, you know, hands and knees or this and that. And I was beyond triggered. And I even was like taken aback, like, why am I so triggered? Like, and then when it got to me, I literally, you know, that feeling when you blank out and then you can't move your body.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm laying there, looking up, and everyone's looking at me, and I'm like, I need to stop. And that was powerful for me to be able to say, and internally I thought everyone's looking at me. I look crazy. I look like a freak. And it wasn't the case at all. That was how I was feeling inside. And they all just loved me and supported me. The next day I went through all of them and I got through them. And that was such a breakthrough for me. And ESD, the physical techniques, not really coming from our background, that's very physical, but the soft techniques, the boundaries, the role playing, I mean, so mind blowing. Like even the simple role playing of when somebody puts their arm around you, like I've been there, like how do you get them off, or how do. So yeah, ESD really changed my home life, my mental health. I mean, it's helped a lot. It's not perfect, but people have seen a difference.
That's awesome. Yeah, I know that for me in 2019, it was definitely a game changer for my relationship. I'm coming home and saying all these boundaries. You will take
What's he like?
You will put your board short away. They will not on the floor anymore.
Thank you.
Yeah, no. But yeah, I get what you were saying. It was really interesting for me because I definitely, when I was having my experience for the impact, I pushed through it, but Arlene was right there for me afterwards, and she could tell I was going through something, and she, said, if you want to talk about it. And I just was like, oh my God. Yeah, I think that those experiences when it comes to impact can be very triggering, and it's really nice if you have someone who's trauma informed, who's there to help you along the way. I think it's really beautiful what ESD has to offer in that regard, and you got through it. So this is
not only got through it, I broke through something that I have been dealing with for many, many years, because it was a direct kind of link to like, I have not been in a relationship or had any kind of, sexual contact since Mia was born, and I'm fine with it. It's healthy for me. But on the flip of it, being that triggered and, because visually seeing the rape scenarios, I'm like, oh, this is way deeper. And this was like, because I had blocked it out. Like, so it was, I needed it. I needed that breakthrough for sure. Yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah. And that's something that so many people, I think that's a reason why a lot of people don't want to go to a self-defense workshop, because it's like, oh God, if I do, I actually have to face this. I have to face either what happened to me or something that happened to somebody who I know. And that's very scary. But it is, again, it's also something that's very brave. So when you were, mentally preparing yourself that second day, what were certain key turning points that helped you to actually work through it?
It was what happened to me the day before, literally like that unlocking of the literally blocking everything out, because I was the last person to go on that first day. So watching everybody be put in these positions and, they're all doing it. It was just like, it got worse and worse. And then afterwards, I'm not a big, not that I'm not a big cry. It's hard for me to cry, and I cried a little bit after, and it was kind of like this release. And then being able to talk to the other women, because I was not alone. Everybody in our class went through something. My story wasn't exactly unique, but to watch them get through their stuff, so we really leaned on each other, and it helped. It helped a lot.
Yeah. Yeah. It's great that you had other people too to walk you through that and be there for you. I know that that was also something very special for my cohort, was all of us being able to come together. I mean, you make lifelong friends there, so that's really cool.
Oh my goodness, yeah. And they're gonna be there for you even if you don't want it, or you think you don't want it, because you're used to being on your own and it's always on you, or you're always taking care of everybody else. So it was a really good feeling to be able to just lean on people and not be judged.
Yeah, for sure. So when it comes to you and your personal superpower, what do you think that is and why?
My own superpower?
Yeah.
Um, oh, that's a good one.
Because
My superpower, I mean, in a simple word, would be like my loyalty, my loyalty, or my empathy. I mean, that's the reason why I went as far as I did, because it's like, okay, I can't feel me, but I'm feeling for you, and it's not right. So, yeah.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing. Yeah, I think that especially people who have gone through traumatic situations, it is very hard for you to feel all of your emotions fully. It's very hard to cry because you've just become so detached from everything. So it's
Yep.
the realization of like, oh, what is it to feel? What does that even look like? And actually having a conversation about it. If you had, one piece of advice that you could give your younger self, who is going through it, what would that have been?
Tell that person you trusted, or tell that person that tried to help you at school. I remember a school nurse. I'm trying to make it because tell's a little too simple. For me personally, I remember I was in Colorado, and I had a school nurse that was very obviously observant, because I wasn't getting picked up, to go back to the Olympic Training Center. I was coming late. I mean, I was too skinny. I looked abused, and she really reached out and was trying to help me. And I think that I remember thinking she was an angel, because she'd give me right. If I would have just really told her, I would have gotten real help. But it was 1995, when people might be thinking, well, why didn't she report it? It was a little different, back then, and the circumstances. But yeah, if I would have tell my younger self, tell.
Yeah, for sure. It's definitely important. What, if you could give advice to young girls out there? I mean, I think that not everybody has experienced what we have or what you have personally, but I know that now more than ever, women's rights are at the forefront, in the news in so many different ways. What could you tell a young girl who is going through the world and trying to figure herself out?
um it's never going to be perfect. It's never going to be easy. You might not have that perfect family or friends, but if you can find one person that, like, mentor, or a mother, or whatever you need, mother figure, father figure, sister figure, to be there for you and help you and guide you, then I mean, I found that super helpful, because that's when things really started to turn around for me, when real people, like magic, all of a sudden were in my lives, that really cared about me, that it just started turning around. You need support. You can't do it alone.
It's so true. And
Yeah.
yeah, I think that when younger years, we're always trying to figure it out,
Yeah.
because we don't want other people to know, or we don't want them to look at us differently. There's a lot of judgment going on in our brains. So it's great advice. So
Yep.
how can people find you, if they are inspired by this, they want to find out more about PAVE, how would they do that?
They can definitely check out. I have a, LinkedIn, Mandy Meloon. We have our PAVE prevention website, literally at paveprevention.com. We're the first ones to come up. You could read what we do. We have a YouTube channel. We have some amazing podcasts, and we have a lot of them out right now. And I mean, they're really, really good. And I really wanted to do yours, because yours is so good. I love yours. So
Thank you.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's how you can find me. Google me. I'm everywhere.
No, it's so scary. I Googled myself the other day and I was like, oh my gosh, this video was from, like early 2000s. What was I doing? Why does my hair look that way?
Well, you know what's not super fun? My 8-year-old starting to Google me because like everything's on there. We're having to have age appropriate conversations. But yeah, talk about
Oh,
a teacher called and was like, "Oh, we caught me on her tablet Googling you." And luckily, the only thing that came up was like me kicking somebody in the face. But I was like, "Oh, that hurt."
yeah, yeah. That would
Yeah,
be an interesting conversation to have.
we touched base on it a little bit, and I just said some really bad things happened to me when I was younger by bad people, and we'll just she's gonna have more and more and more, but oh, it breaks my heart. You know what I mean?
I think it's powerful though, you being able to have that conversation, because so many people out there who have children, and are learning more about their parents, it is really triggering, or it's very hard for them to understand, that your mom is human, your mom had experiences, and then also that those were then, here we are now,
Yeah.
to do about it. So I think that it's really great that you have your daughter, educating her along the way of what that would look like. How old is your daughter now?
She's 8, and I get asked a lot, like, am I overly protective? Would you put her in martial arts? Number one, she's done jujitsu for like over 3 years, and then she's on a break. And number two, I'm not overly, but I definitely don't let a coach, or I call it run my household. I ask questions, I do background checks, I research the school. I'm the parent. These are things that are really important, and you have to watch out for it because martial arts schools aren't regulated. And time again, it's in the news. Some pervert weirdo is taking advantage of children using
Yeah.
martial arts. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think that it's really awesome that they have someone like you who's educating them when it comes to like your children, but then also, I think that there should be some sort of structures when it comes to martial arts schools, and actually signing different forms so that you can protect your child when they're attending the schools, or even you as a participant. And because how many times have the women watching experienced something either degrading or sexual harassment at a school? It's something that's so very common. And I think we don't necessarily talk about it nearly enough.
No, and it's definitely not, and especially, and it's not just sexual abuse. Like I said, I saw a lot of physical abuse with, young, boys and girls. So and it's still ongoing.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah. And well, Mandy, I really appreciate you coming on. I really appreciate you sharing your story. Again, thank you for being so brave and bold. And I look forward to having you on again.
I appreciate it, and thanks for having me. This was fun.
Awesome. Likewise.